side plot or a character, the main character, or a small character who's having a different experience than everyone else. There's always something, especially when you get to be my age, that I've experienced that is a way into the story for me. So, like I said before, the idea of this guy having a stroke is fascinating to me because my body is falling apart. I'm getting older, and I know that even though my body is falling apart, my mind and my, for lack of a better word, soul are as alive and as active as they ever have been. And so the challenge of expressing what's inside of me, even though my tools of expression are being destroyed, is a way into this project for me. And that the fact that it's about the universe is irrelevant to me. It's about me and what I've experienced and the reflection of it in this story.
Yeah. I really love that, and I really agree, because I feel like the first read through I had of the piece, I interpreted the play as just being about these two sisters, and their relationship and how different they are, and that was something I could relate to because I have a sister and we're very different people. I love that, finding a way into it based on where you're coming from.
Yeah. Leila, what was it like to find your way into the character Leila, who is such a different and, from my perspective, difficult person in many ways?
Well, I think
also
you're
such a
fairly
brave
biased
and
about
great
Leila.
person. It's true. Our characters do not get along.
For me, I think it's what they say is like, there's no, like, when you're the actor, you're never the villain.
Yeah.
Of course.
And
you can't play that.
And so I guess I never see her as being difficult, which is why I'm like teasing you. I'm just driven. But I think that really it is. Like, she has a lot of connections that she's struggling with, but she also knows what her calling is. And like in a lot of ways, even like these transmissions have been going on so long. Like they've been there, if you think about it, how long they've been having and what time it is. They've been there her whole life.
You mean in the story?
In the story.
In the story, it's 50 years in the future.
It's 50 years in the future.
And they've been getting transmissions since like now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when she was growing up with like these mystery transmissions, and whether or not technology would get off the planet, I think she always knew like that's where I'm going. And she talks about that in her monologue. Now people like, how can we build technology to go build a telescope to see Mars? How can we like get this instrument to take another reading of something? And she's like, I have never been interested in how do we get technology to do a peek. What I've always wanted to do is get a human being there.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's driven her from the get-go. Like, she made that decision as a child that she was going, and she wasn't going to take no for an answer. So she's definitely, and I think that's been like the drive for her. So for that, I can be very admiring. Yeah. Because for myself, I've always had those moments where I've taken a note to heart and been like, okay, well, I'll go build my little woodshed over here or something. Like, it changed direction in my life. So to get to play a character whose tenacity actually takes her to the stars and takes her to the next place, it's a great fulfillment in being able to dive into what that means and what those accomplishments are.
Yeah. It's funny that you say like you can never have your character be the villain, and that is absolutely true. Like, for me, that's what I love about playing a very specific character, is that like that process of finding your way in has made me a better person, more skilled at finding my way into the people or things that I find in my life as well. I mean, that doesn't mean I'm a good person all the time, but I do think it helps, and I do think that is really what brings a lot of the like selfish personal satisfaction for me, is that I feel myself, like I feel in the process like I'm being remade into someone with a more expansive viewpoint. It's good to feel that way for me. Yeah. Dave, you have been dancing with the Limon Company in New York for the past year now?
2 years now.
2 years, wow. So you've been touring all over the world doing like very hardcore modern dance on an extremely intensive touring schedule. What's it like to switch gears into acting?
Well, I think this role in particular, there's a lot that it allows me to pull from in terms of how I can relate to Joel.
Yeah. Dr. Joel Horton.
Dr. Joel Horton. Mm-hmm. And I think, actually, without even talking about the artistic side of dance, just in terms of travel, my personality is a bit of a travel junkie. So it doesn't take much to convince me to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. But unlike the characters in this play, it's always you might not return, which for me, even, 1% chance is still like, okay, fine, but that's a might. Mm-hmm. For here, it's you will not.
Yeah.
There's always a choice. There's always the choice for me to come back.
Yeah.
But these characters, they really don't have that. And I think that's something I've noticed about Joel is incredibly dedicated, but one thing does not satisfy him. He cannot completely dedicate himself to something entirely. So the reason that he has a family is because the work on the mission while being his life's work is not enough. It's similar. There are some older members of my company who like to say that if you can imagine yourself doing anything else, then you shouldn't be in this business. And I think that's fake. I don't think that's true. Because I commit to dance and to art in all its forms as my life work. And I think it means as much to me as the transmission work does to Joel. But there has to be something else that informs you. And I think that's the difference between my character and Leila. Leila gives it all. And that is one way to approach it, but it creates a specific personality.
Yeah.
And Joel needs at least two things, which brings us back to choice. He has the choice of which he focuses on. He gets to move back and forth between the things in order to keep a balance and to keep himself focused on what is his life goal.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you go, given the opportunity, into space to meet a distant society, never to return?
I have actually had this conversation with a friend, and it's the same thing. If you told me I might never return, I would still go. But I would want the option. I find the planet Earth too beautiful to leave forever. This is our home. This is what gave us life. This is where our species resides.
Yeah.
If you told me you go and, you might be able to come back, fine. But not if I was never able to have the hope of coming back.
Yeah.
My friend, on the other hand, told me he would send me a text message, and, that's probably about all I'd get before he hopped on the ship.
Yeah. Yeah, what do other people think? Is anybody, vaguely tempted by the idea of just being able to take off with your nearest and dearest, but being able to kind of take off with the people close to you and a team of experts and sail into
I feel like those are two different questions, because going without your family is one challenge, and going with your family is a completely different challenge.
Yeah.
Because if I'm just taking me and my best buddies and everyone I care about, then I think it's more are you willing to risk death? If it's going and severing every connection you have with everyone you ever cared about, I feel like that's its own unique challenge.
Yeah.
And when I had that conversation with Ian, I was like, well, if I could bring my dog, I'm good. So, but I don't know, I guess maybe there's a resonance as it's that evaluation of what are those relationships, what are fulfillment are you getting out of your relationships, what are those ties that are going to keep you here or not.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm a woman who's currently single, and have my dog and my career and my friends and stuff, and so it would be hard to say goodbye to people, but I don't have someone who needs me as a person who's not going to get fed, whose emotional life is going to be devastated if I don't show up tomorrow. So it's an easier proposition for me to be like, if I can take my dog because I know I'm good to go, because like, well, if we lose heat and space, at least we can curl up. Like, I don't know. But if I definitely had a kid, then the answer is definitely no. Like, I'm not going. Or like, if I had a husband, or if I had like that relationship that needed me, that was like intrinsic to somebody else's life, then it's an instant no. So it's like, as I've had those relationships in my life, it's been like, hell no, I won't go. But when those relationships aren't there, it's a much easier proposition to be like, yeah, sure, check me on the box, ship me out. What do I got?
But I don't know if it's an instant no, because I have that situation. I actually relate very deeply to people like Zada and people like Joel in this show, because my family situation is such that I can't really take off forever. Like I can take off temporarily, but forever is not really an option. But as a person, I connect also to Leila in terms of personality. Like, we have that same kind of tenacity and drive. So it's a hard question for me to chew on, because I do feel the burden of responsibility, but I also feel the excitement of discovery.
Yeah. Nada, do you have anything to say while we're talking about this? I feel like you might have an interesting perspective on this.
A lot have already been said, and I said, enough, I think. I'm happy to be here. Good luck to everybody. Looking forward to continuing and completing the work.
Nada, this conversation reminds me of a conversation you and I had yesterday. For the listeners, Nada and I are of a similar experience level, chronologically speaking. And
you guys are both really
and
quick.
we talked about how sick of traveling we are. And remember that conversation?
Yeah.
And
it was only yesterday.
Yeah, only yesterday. And when I was younger, and Nada agreed with me, and feel free to jump in, the idea of being in a new place for a new experience with people I'd never met before was so attractive that I was willing to subject my body to any number of indignities, such as, being on a plane for 14, 15, 16. Nada and I are both from the Middle East, and, we would go 15-hour flight, and, it was worth it. And let's just say it's a little less worth it. And it's not all physical discomfort that necessarily dissuades me now. It's a sense that, and I'm not like, I'm not the most interesting man in the world or anything like that, but I've been around the block, and I don't need to go around too many more blocks to see what I've already seen. There's plenty on this block that keeps me engaged, because again, it's not about expansion anymore for me. It's about a kind of contraction, a looking within. But I did need to look without for a long time. And I'm looking at a 9-year-old girl right now, and I'm sure she doesn't understand one word I am saying. And she shouldn't.
What do you think, Afia?
I have no idea what you're saying. I was just looking at the paintings. It didn't really make me.
She was ignoring me, and as she should, and looking at the paintings behind me. She was literally just ignoring everything, and it's absolutely appropriate.
Yeah. I was wondering about that too, actually. Some of my friends who are my age, but just better traveled than I am,